So to free people from that prison, can you kill lots of innocent people according to the logic of the raid in Gaza?
What I'm trying to say is, if you represent the Palestinian people, you represent the Israeli people, we look at this quite differently. I don't want to
say... I know you do, which is why I'm asking the question, Congressman. I understand that you see it differently. A lot of people watching at home say, why? Why aren't all lives equal?
This interview starts like a normal policy debate, but within minutes, it turns into one of the most uncomfortable exchanges on Gaza you'll ever hear on live television. Mehdi Hasan repeatedly presses Congressman Dean Phillips on one brutal question. If Palestinian lives matter equally, then why does Washington keep justifying mass civilian deaths? And the moment Phillips says hundreds of Palestinian deaths are a price that has to be paid to rescue hostages, the entire conversation explodes. Later, Mehdi corners him over weapons to Israel, ICC sanctions, and even Trump's criminal conviction, and Phillips struggles to defend contradictions that keep piling up.
Congressman, Benjamin Netanyahu, I'm sure you saw, put out a video this week saying the Biden administration, quote, has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel, which I wish were true, but isn't true, as the White House has since pointed out. But it is a Republican talking point and will only help the GOP going forward. Why does Joe Biden, why does your party continue to help, assist, defend, invite to Congress a man who seems intent on lying about your party leader, happy to humiliate Biden and the Democrats whenever he can in public, and is keen to see your candidate lose to Donald Trump in November?
Well, first of all, let me say I agree with everything you just said, other than the invitation, which of course was extended by the Republicans, Mike Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson.
Co-signed by Democrats.
Co-signed, out of tradition, but I concur. Your question is, why would we continue to support him? I'm glad you said him, by the way, because so much of this debate and deliberation, I think, is about Israel and the people of Israel and the nation of Israel, not enough about Netanyahu, who in my estimation is a disaster for Israel, for the Jewish diaspora, certainly for Gaza. And I wish we would have more conversations about him, just as we should have had more conversations about Trump. I wish the world had more conversations about Trump versus America. With all that said, he is undermining this relationship. I think he's undermining the security of Israel. I think the invitation was in poor taste and destructive. And I think his video yesterday was a summation of how he is disrespecting the United States of America. And if I were Joe Biden, I would be awfully, awfully disappointed.
Netanyahu also said in that video, quote, give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster. That doesn't sound like a man who has signed up to Joe Biden and the UN's ceasefire plan. In fact, Netanyahu keeps saying he will not end this war of his until it's reached its goals, destroying Hamas, etc. It's a non-starter for him, these are his words, to do a deal with Hamas right now. So why does the Biden administration keep, I would say, lying and saying Israel has signed up to the ceasefire plan and only Hamas hasn't? We keep seeing Blinken, Biden saying it's only Hamas, Israel's on board, and then Netanyahu keeps saying, no, we're not.
Well, I think there's truth to that, though, Mehdi. I do think Israel will be on board. First of all, this is all posturing.
Will be is not. Hold on, he said will be. The president is saying they have. The UN resolution said Israel has accepted it.
I believe they have. I don't think they...
Even though he says, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. That doesn't sound like someone who's up for a ceasefire.
Let me just reflect on the ceasefire. It is my not just opinion, but my belief and understanding that Israel will accept that, waiting on Hamas. Now, let's be honest. First of all, I don't like equating Netanyahu with Hamas. I have grave concerns about Netanyahu. I have far more grave concerns about Hamas, but neither of these entities, the Netanyahu government nor Hamas, have an incentive to end this. Let's just be forthright. Netanyahu knows that when this ends, his political career is probably done. He might be going to prison. Hamas knows, and they've articulated, it's in their best interest to keep it going. They've gotten the sympathy of the world. So when you have two parties have no incentive to end this, both have a stake in this. I do know Israel will accept this ceasefire.
Yes, you've said that about 4 times. But the UN resolution, hold on,
say it publicly. They will,
Congressman, but the resolution that was passed at the UN said Israel has accepted it. And Joe Biden said they have accepted it.
I believe that is not true. I believe that to be true privately. You're saying that Netanyahu has not said it publicly.
He hasn't said it publicly. I think he said the opposite publicly, right?
And waiting on Hamas to do the same thing. There must be, let me just make it clear, there must be a ceasefire.
Can we agree then? Okay, let's find a common ground, because I fear we're going to argue even more as we go forward. Can we agree that as of right now, publicly, as far as we have any public evidence that I can have as a journalist, Israel, in the form of Prime Minister Benjamin, has not accepted a ceasefire deal?
Have not publicly. I believe privately they have.
So privately, not only said I have, but publicly he does videos mocking Biden.
I think that's exactly. And that is worthy of a conversation. And I want to make it clear to you, too, and everybody listening and watching. There should be a ceasefire. I've been saying this for months. release the hostages, have a ceasefire. By the way, that goes back to October 6th, and I wish we had started more conversations right now about the future.
Okay.
Let's talk about resolving this once and for all, and for our generation to continue to live through this cycle of bloodshed,
yes,
and then pause, and bloodshed and pause is unacceptable.
Agreed. Just on Netanyahu, before we move on, the top Democrats in Congress, Schumer and Jeffries, did co-sign, you say out of tradition, an invite for him to speak. He'll be here next month. Will you be attending the Netanyahu speech in Congress next month to listen to him lie and smear your party and the president? I know you're not a fan of his. You made it very clear just a moment ago. So will you join Bernie Sanders, a Jewish Democratic member of Congress like yourself, and many other Democrats who say we're not going to go to this speech and be insulted by this guy who's being investigated for both war crimes and genocide?
My whole drive in today to be with you, I spent thinking about this issue. I've not made a decision. I'm appalled by him. I love Israel. I believe the Israel state, the nation, is a dear friend of us, and I think we share more values than people recognize. Netanyahu is a real problem. His government is despicable. I believe Tom Friedman's column in the New York Times just yesterday sums it up beautifully how I feel. I think as a member of Congress, it is my obligation. I was elected to participate. Doesn't mean I agree with people. In fact, I've seen a lot of stuff on the House floor, Mehdi, you can imagine, with which I not just disagree, I find appalling, including listening to people speak on the House floor. So I'm thinking about that right now. I am deeply opposed to his leadership. I also believe it's a responsibility to show up and listen in the absence of hearing someone. I think that is also problematic. I also know that, let's talk politics for a second. Mike Johnson has a big win on his hands. If half the Democratic caucus decides not to show up to Netanyahu's speech, mark my words, that will be accretive to Donald Trump. So I'm weighing all these things right now. At the end of the day, I'll make a decision.
I'm not sure the American public are fans of Netanyahu. I don't think it will matter. I think they'll appreciate you people taking a principled stand.
Independent voters.
I don't think there's a big pro-Netanyahu movement amongst independent voters. But
there's a big pro-Israel movement.
So let's talk about that. What's going on? I want to talk about deaths in Gaza from all the weaponry that we have given to Netanyahu, continue to give to an ungrateful Netanyahu. The other week, we saw 4 Israeli hostages rescued from inside of Gaza by an Israeli military and police operation, returned to their families. A very good thing. President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, all reacted with praise, with celebration. None of them, in their initial responses, had a single word to say about the over 200 Palestinians reportedly killed, over 700 injured in that rescue operation, many of them innocent women and children. A lot of people have been asking this for the last 8-9 months. I'm sure you hear it in your constituency. Do Palestinian lives just not matter to the modern Democratic Party?
Oh, I think that's a horrifying statement. Let me acknowledge let me acknowledge the 38,000 human beings killed in Gaza, the 1,200 Israelis, but particularly the innocents. To me, it's all the same. They're human beings. I'm appalled and disgusted. First of all, there are Americans being held hostage. Let me change the lens for a moment. I believe, if anything, it has been the United States and the Biden administration should have been the foremost responsibility to extract our hostages, our nationals. I think there are 6 or 7 still, we don't know even if they're alive. So the question is, would we undertake an effort to extract American hostages, 2, 3, 4, 7, if we knew 200 civilians would be killed in the process?
What's the answer?
Boy, that's a tough question. That's a tough question. If you're the leader of a country, absolutely.
You killed 200 people to save 6.
Mehdi, look at first of all, I'm the son of I'm a Gold Star son. I lost my dad in Vietnam. One of the most despicable, I think, wars of the United States has ever prosecuted. We've killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people over the years. We continue to. Look at what we did in Japan to end a war. These are philosophical questions that most Americans would never want to be faced with.
But you're a member of Congress, right?
I'm a member of Congress.
You wanted to be president.
Yes.
So let me ask you the straight-up question.
Let me answer your question.
Please.
I believe, as the President of the United States, his or her obligation should always be the safety and security of Americans first. It does not mean dismissing other humanity, but in the case of hostages, when it comes to this, and we've tried this before, and we've seen carnage. The fact of the matter is, I think we should extract. And by the way, if that means there are civilian deaths as a result, unfortunately, that's, I think, a cost.
Well, the cost implies there's no other choice. We, of course, know that there was another way to get the hostages out.
I have empathy.
Well, hold on. There's another way to get the hostages out. We got over 100 hostages out in a deal in November. You could have got Benjamin Netanyahu blocking another deal. But just I want to be very specific. In your view, is killing 274 Palestinians, including many children, an acceptable price to pay for the freeing of 4 Israelis?
Like I said, I don't. You want a clear answer, and you want to make this black and white.
Is it an acceptable price to pay?
It's an unacceptable price, but I think it's a price that has to be paid.
Wow.
This is the moment the interview completely changes tone. Mehdi realizes Phillips is openly admitting that hundreds of Palestinian civilians dying can be justified if Israeli hostages are rescued. And immediately, Mehdi flips the logic back on him, asking whether the same standard would apply in reverse for Palestinians trying to free detainees from Israeli prisons. That reversal catches Phillips completely off guard. What makes this exchange so powerful is that Mehdi isn't yelling or interrupting randomly. He's forcing consistency. If innocent lives are equal, then the moral standard has to stay equal no matter who's suffering. And Phillips clearly doesn't want to answer that directly because the second the logic is reversed, the political framing becomes extremely uncomfortable for mainstream American politicians.
Okay, so how many Palestinians would it be acceptable to kill in order to get back a single hostage? What's the upper limit? Would 400?
When we start talking about human lives, every single one life is too many. And let me just, let's
but you
be
just
human
said 274 is a price that has to be paid.
Because
I'm saying if it was 1,000, would you pay that?
Because in my estimation, if we look at questions like this in a vacuum, of course we're going to come up with different answers than in the context of the entire challenge of the Middle East. Because if we are increasingly seen, the United States of America in particular, as unwilling to sometimes do what's necessary to demonstrate some strength and prevent.
Congressman, you just said a moment ago we have a history of killing thousands of innocent people.
We do. And my father died in a war that was.
I do need to ask a question for the value of Palestinian life.
Yes.
So, if you're saying that to get free people from the clutches of horrible captivity, hostages, people possibly being abused in captivity, to free them, you have to pay a price, right? It's a horrible price. Does that ratio work the other way? How many Israelis can Palestinians kill in order to free Palestinian detainees who are currently being tortured in Israeli captivity, some of them being raped to death, according to the New York Times last week? Can they kill 200 Israelis? Hold on, let me finish the question. Can they kill 200 Israelis to free 4 Palestinians who are being tortured in an Israeli prison?
I think it's a question that I'm sure Palestinians are asking the same way as Israelis.
No, you answered it. You answered it for Israel. I would like you to answer it in reverse.
Let me just clarify something you just said. You said Palestinian prisoners are being raped to death by Israeli soldiers.
Yes, this is a report in the New York Times last week.
I don't believe that to be true. Nonetheless, the question.
A 41-year-old detainee said the interrogators made me sit on something like a hot metal stick, and it felt like fire. He said another detainee died after they put the electric stick up his anus.
No, it's repulsive.
This is an Israeli dungeon that CNN and New York Times have both reported on. UN investigators. So to free people from that prison, can you kill lots of innocent people according to the logic of the raid in Gaza?
What I'm trying to say is, if you represent the Palestinian people, you represent the Israeli people, we look at this quite differently. I don't want to
see... I know you do, which is why I'm asking the question, Congressman. I understand that you see it differently. A lot of people watching at home say, why aren't all lives equal?
They should be.
But they're not. Well, then let's go.
But let's go. Look, what I don't want to do is get into a debate of who suffered worse, whose lives.
By the way, I'm asking about our lives treated equally.
Innocent Palestinian lives matter just as much as innocent Israeli lives, Muslim lives as much as Jewish and Christian lives. That's who I am. Now, with all that said, war is hell, and this is nauseating. And we're trying to get back.
I worry about this line, war is hell, because can't Hamas say the same thing when you accuse them of war crimes? They can say war is hell.
Yes,
Isn't that why we have rules to war? So that we stop it from being hell?
Yes, they can. War is hell. And by the way, let me go back. Let me go back to Netanyahu. I've said to his face, as the ranking member of the Middle East Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs, as a Jewish man, you can imagine that, look, you're a Muslim man, I'm a Jewish man. We represent, to some degree, when we're on public platforms, our people, our diasporas. I've said to Netanyahu's face, in Israel, in Jerusalem, in his office, what I felt, which is the settlement policy is creating dynamics that will only make Israel's security and safety at grave risk. His treatment of Palestinians, when people have nothing to protect, they act in ways that the rest of the free world would consider irrational. So this goes way back. The question is, they're both wrong. Netanyahu is wrong. Hamas is wrong. I don't want to equate the two, but the fact of the matter...
That wasn't my question, but I appreciate you making that point.
I want to make that clear.
Let's talk about Netanyahu briefly in a different context. You said war is hell. I don't like that statement. I think war has rules. People should follow the rules of war to prevent it from being hell. Right? We built an entire post-war legal architecture for that reason. America led the way.
Well, after we dropped nuclear weapons, after we firebombed Tokyo, I mean,
and then we came up with Geneva Conventions, UN Declaration, etc., Universal Declaration. You have said No one is above the law, you've said repeatedly on Twitter in relation to Donald Trump, and I agree with you. You're right. What I don't understand is why you insist on putting Benjamin Netanyahu, who you don't like, you've said that since the beginning of this interview, why you insist on putting him above international law. You were one of 42 House Democrats who voted with Republicans earlier this month to impose sanctions on the ICC chief prosecutor and other ICC officials after he announced he was seeking an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. You are a Democrat, a liberal, a supporter of the rule of law, and you're going after the International Criminal Court to protect Benjamin Netanyahu.
They went beyond their purview, Mehdi, and they did not afford, they didn't even follow their own process in this case. Look, I have some misgivings about the ICC. This was very distinct. By the way, he's not above the law. And in fact, I think everything you just shared, whether it is the prisoner who was just tortured, according to this report, war crimes by Hamas, war crimes by Israel. Yes, they should be litigated. It should be transparent. It should be public. I think the way the ICC went about it was absolutely incorrect.
Why?
But do I believe, because they didn't follow their own standards, and they were beyond their purview. Of course, Israel and the U.S. not party to the ICC.
Nor is Russia.
And I think, by
Hold
the
on,
way,
nor is, well, first of all, Palestine is party to the ICC, as you know, and Russia isn't, and we all supported the ICC arrest warrants against Putin. Biden was happy with it, said it was good.
like I just said, it's beyond their purview. And secondly,
Why is Putin not beyond their purview, but Netanyahu is?
Well, I think the whole methodology, frankly, of the ICC right now.
I get that, but we didn't have but you didn't vote for sanctions on the ICC when they went after Putin, only after Netanyahu.
I understand. In this case, I do not believe that the way they did not afford Israel even the right to respond. Yeah, I believe in due process. Let me put it that way. I believe in due process. The way they pursued this did not afford him that. Look, I'm not a defender of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Wait, you voted for a bill? Yeah. Okay, so this bill you voted for, most Democrats,
sure,
didn't vote for this bill.
Did.
It's so broad. Even if we were to agree with you that there are